Hey everybody. Thanks for having me. Thanks for being here. Thanks for showing up and taking an interest in games or being in games if you've been in the industry a while. Real quick, I just wanted to thank Gwen and Cheryl and Brian as well for inviting me to be here, and everyone at the Singapore Games Association. I wish I could be there with you all right now, but I am trapped in America. Um, but thankfully, I can talk to you all over the internet a little bit about the games industry and more specifically about my career and my path, which is, of course, just very specifically my path. I'm always hesitant to talk too specifically or give specific advice when it comes to career, and particularly a career in the games industry, because mine has been a lot of unexpected turns. And I think that my approaches to the work and to my professionalism and my career have been more about short term, how I do the work, and the seriousness with which I take it, and not so much about some sort of master plan that I had or some perfect strategy. But let's dive in. So, hi, by the way. My name is Teddy Dief. I am an independent game maker, game writer, and director based mostly out of Los Angeles. I'll talk a little bit about my career, but I've been a designer at Disney. I've been a game designer at Microsoft Studios. I was a creative director at Square Enix Montréal. And I am a co-maker, part of the group of indie friends who made Hyperlight Drifter, and I'm now working on something else. So let's talk about it. My philosophy, I would say, in all of the career choices I've made has been driven by, I want to say two things. One is a complete lack of patience. And the second one, which I'll get to later, is a complete lack of long-term planning. But I'm going to now spend the next 20 or 30 minutes trying to make it sound like I knew what I was doing, and that, but actually to focus on why I made those choices and why I frame it like that. And I do want to say, before I dive into the steps of my career, I want to say that I try to be I'm a responsible person about planning. I have quit a lot of jobs. I have left a lot of fortunate situations, and I've always done that with something else lined up, ready to go. I'm always kind of thinking about the next thing, which is a blessing and a curse. But I think that, I've had a lot of good fortune and a lot of privilege, but having things lined up, trying to be responsible, and making sure that I'm taking care of myself and that I'm in a financially okay position has been important. But let's talk about a lack of patience. When I was in university, I studied programming and music. I don't know why. I found those things to be interesting, and I don't think that I had a patience to study anything other than what I really was fascinated by. Whether or not that was a good choice, it did end up serving me really well now, but maybe that's luck of the draw. While I was in university, I took my first programming job. I was programming for a network services company, so not games at all, just very programmery, and I hated it. I hated it so much that I kind of pulled back from my major. I still did get a degree in programming, but I didn't like programming for programming's sake, for me personally. I needed a reason to do it, and it wasn't until much later that I would find that reason. My first job out of university was in advertising. Also wasn't in games, but it was in something approaching a mixture of business and the arts, and I knew I found that interesting. I worked there for about a year and a half, and experienced production of a lot of different types of media: television, film, print, radio. And ultimately, I quit that job because I started to get this idea that maybe I could make video games. I had never seriously thought it could be an option for me. I was living in New York at the time, where there there wasn't a strong games industry, and it is a difficult city to run a studio in. But I quit advertising because I felt that it was too slow for me. For me, the industry, the area of advertising I was in, felt like I had this passion, I had this energy, and I wanted to have a reason to pour my just after college energies into something, and I felt like no one was excited about the work. Like the clients were bad and people didn't like them, and that meant that they didn't work as hard as, and I didn't work as hard as I wanted to, and I could feel that I had more energy at the end of the day and more ideas, and I needed to find a place to put that. So I quit that job, got a different job first, my first job in games, working for a company called Gameloft, doing marketing and advertising for them, because that was my in. As I said, okay, well, I don't have any experience in games, but I have experience in advertising, so I'll use that. And I got into a games company. I worked there for about a year and a half, but I quit there too. Wait, I was fired from that job, but it's my fault. I, again, was feeling impatient, and I started to feel that I wanted to create games, not just advertise them, and I really wanted to do that. And so I made that known. I told the game design department that I wanted to work with them. I told my boss that I wanted to work in game design. And I'll never forget, I had a conversation with the vice president of my department, who told me that he'd heard I wanted to work in game design, and was that true? And was I sure I didn't want to stay in advertising because they liked me? And I said, yes, I'm sure. And so they fired me because they didn't have any jobs in game design. But I had been straightforward and impatient with the idea of not trying to work in the job that I wanted to do, or in the role that I wanted to do, and the skills that I wanted to develop. So while I was going through that, I had decided to apply to film schools because I was so full of ideas and creative desire that I wanted to be trained in a way to get me up to speed, because I feel like I didn't have any structure for creative ideas. I didn't know how to put them together. So I happened to get into film school, very luckily, right around the time I was fired, and eventually moved to Los Angeles to go to film school, which I later quit. I went to USC for grad school, for film school, and when I got there, I realized that there was a games department that had not really caught my eye before. I didn't think it was quite what I wanted. I was trying to be very career-focused, and the games department there felt what I would say at the time was too artsy. I was just trying to keep an idea for how I could get jobs, and I wasn't sure how I could do that. So I worked in film, and then I felt, I like this, but it's not the right fit. I don't actually love film the way I love games. I'm not from film. I'm not fluent in the creative language of film, but in games I kind of feel like I can speak the language. And so I left film school, stayed in that school, but transferred over to the games department. I kept wiggling. You can kind of tell I never really have an idea of where I'm going, but I know when something isn't just right, and I've adjusted. So I did that for a while. While I was in grad school, I got my first job as a game designer, part-time at Disney in Los Angeles, thanks to the recommendation of a professor of mine. Disney liked me. I worked hard for them and learned how to program in Python for them. And all this while, I was teaching myself to program again, because I had quit programming, if you recall. But now that I had a reason to program, it could hold my interest, I guess. So I was working at Disney. I worked there for about 2 years, part-time, and I felt impatient again. I felt like I was working in their MMO group, working on massively multiplayer online games, and it was a big company, it was a slow company, and I felt the slowness, and I felt that I wanted to be shipping things. So I quit because I lined up a job at Microsoft. Microsoft Studios had been recruiting at my school, and I managed to get an associate game design position there and go. I drove up and lived in Seattle for a little while, and I worked at Microsoft. A very different studio, also a big company, but different values, different types of games. And I learned a lot more about different types of game design, different tools, a different type of production, how they did it. And yet again, I only got to work there for a few months, and they offered me a job, which I decided not to take. Again, because of a sort of impatience, or maybe a lack of willingness to compromise. I think that compromise is important creatively, and I think it's important not to be too stubborn for your own good. But when it came to big career moves, I tried to respect the weight of taking a job. That if I was going to go to a job or a school for a year or two or more, a year or two is a really long time. I still feel today like a year or two or more is a really long time. And so with those kind of currencies of my time, I try to be very impatient about what is the right way to go. So I turned down Microsoft, and the reason I did that is because I could tell that I might never leave. It's a great studio full of really smart people. The pay was good, and I could tell that the way that they paid people incentivized them to stay. And I worried that if I made that choice then, I might stay longer than I would want, and I might lose some of the ties that I'd been building in Los Angeles. So I very riskily turned that down. From there, there were fewer things for me to turn down, because from there I graduated from school. I had left Microsoft, and I had gone independent. I had started my first studio with a friend, living off of some of our loans. And so from there on out, my impatience in kind of running my own projects could only be applied to myself. If I couldn't blame any sort of organization or red tape or bureaucracy from slowing me down. I was responsible for my own work. And that has sort of carried me through to this day. So to kind of go from there, that might take me into kind of my second piece of my philosophy, which is a lack of long-term planning. While I'm always looking a little bit ahead, games are weird. Games are always changing. We don't really know what we're doing, and the industry doesn't really know what it's doing. It's just evolving day by day. And so I have found that every good opportunity that has come my way has been unexpected, and has come as a result of a lot of luck and a lot of hard work, but definitely both. And it's just been about me keeping my eyes open and trying to be in as many places as I can, going to events like the one you're at now, trying to talk to people, trying to work with different people and learn, so that opportunities might show up, and then grabbing them. So yeah, you can tell I sort of just hopped into each of these opportunities based on like what I needed from them, or what I was interested in. Hyperlight Drifter came about the same way. So I went independent, and I was working. I ended up starting a space, an arts collective in Los Angeles called Glitch City. And Glitch City is still operating today. It's been open for 7 years. And it was just a bunch of us working at home or working out of coffee shops who wanted to feel like that we weren't all alone, and that we could get out of our apartments. And so we founded Glitch City. And it was at Glitch City that I met Bo Blythe and Alex Preston and Casey Hunt and some of the original team members of Hyperlight Drifter. Hyperlight was a project that Alex had been prototyping with Bo and doing concept art for about 6 months, just kind of tinkering part-time, exploring it, and building a Kickstarter. Coincidentally, I was working out of Glitch City, and my business partner and I had decided to take a break. We wanted to start a game of our own, but we couldn't find funding, and we thought maybe we might be able to get some funding, but we had run out of savings, and we needed money now. So we both set out to look for part-time jobs or short-term jobs. And it just so happened that search for me happened the same time that Alex was deciding to launch this Kickstarter. So Alex launched the Kickstarter, and in that same week, I emailed everyone at Glitch City and said, hey, I need a job. Does anyone know of any clients or someone I could do work for? And Alex emailed me and said, hey, I'm about to start this thing. I think I need another programmer to work with Bo, another game designer. Will you do it? Or are you interested? So that was unexpected. I was not planning to work for a different team. I had already started my own small company, and I had to take a serious look at that and decide that this was something I had to be a part of. It was a job opportunity so that I could stay alive, and it was something that connected with me. And so, just like any other job or program or major I have ever taken, I went with what felt right and agreed to work with Alex. We worked on that for a few years and made it. While we were finishing Hyperlight Drifter, I was going to all of the events, every event I could go to, digital or otherwise, and trying to meet people. And in the course of that, I met the folks at Square Enix who were looking for a creative director. Again, not an opportunity I was looking for. I was independent. I was working in an arts collective. I was working off of Kickstarter money. And I was still finishing this game, Hyperlight. And yet, here was this rare opportunity to suddenly become a creative director at a studio, at a company that I love. I love Square Enix. I love Final Fantasy. I love all those things. I told them I had to finish Hyperlight. That was not something I would quit, because that was independent. It was up to us, and it's not just a job. So I left. So I didn't leave. Did not leave Hyperlight, and they fortunately waited for me. But shortly after, I left and I moved out of the country, and I moved to Canada, and I started working for Square Enix. Again, not part of my plan. I didn't want to be in a big company, and I had already managed to find a little bit of stability working independently. But to me, it felt like an opportunity to do something once in a lifetime, to work at a company that I loved. And based on the conversations I had with them, I felt like that impatience I have, that desire to focus on what's interesting to me, aligned with what they wanted. So there I was, having left other companies before, now working for a company again, making like career choices based on what came within my reach. And like I said at the beginning of this, I don't think that I work a lot. I like working. It makes me feel good. I attribute all of these things to luck, all of these opportunities. But I do think that you have to do your best to make opportunities and meet people. You can't really control what is and is not going to work out. There are lots of jobs that I applied to during this story in the background that I didn't get. Applied to every studio in Los Angeles multiple times. But those were the things that showed up, and those were the things that I took. So to me, I would say that building a career and making decisions as you go and figuring out what your journey is going to be, to me feels kind of like walking through a busy crowd on a city street, or, I don't know, in a theme park. or in the subway or something, you know kind of what direction you want to go in, but you can't really see that far in front of you. And you just have to keep moving, and you have to keep finding where the next, available path is, and take it. And try to not be discouraged, and try to simultaneously take what is available to you, but also have a sort of keen eye on what it is that you want to do, and a keen value for your own time, and the amount of time you'll spend in places. Only now that I'm running my own studio on what we're calling the Palm Tree Project would I say that my impatience can only be applied to myself. Like I said, once I went independent, suddenly it has to sort of all be on my ability to pace things out and to bring a team together and to work with them. So finally, I think what I want to say is that, although I'm kind of making this into a cute structure, right? That, my career is defined by no patience and no planning. Those are just sort of the constraints that I work in. I think that the thing that really drives me, and that maybe drives you, is a need to be heard, and a need to connect. That's sort of my philosophy for making things. That, since I've chosen a career in the arts, which is not one of the easiest careers out there, you gotta have something to say. You gotta want to say something. You may not know exactly what that is, and I know I've spent my whole career trying to figure out exactly what I'm trying to say to other people, but working out what to say and how to say it and how to learn the skills to say it, and then trying to reach people with those messages, that's it for me. That's everything. It is a need to connect with people. And that doesn't just mean making like online games that you play with people, but a need to say something, and to hope that people out there will hear it, and that it'll mean something to them. The last thing I'll say, because I kind of always thought this, is that the good news and the bad news of being a creative person is that you are not as original as you think you are. And I think that we're all a combination of our inspirations. But what I mean by that is that, it feels like bad news. Oh, I'm not original. Like, how dare you? But I think it's a good thing in the sense that you may not be the only person who is interested in what you're interested in, or who has had the thoughts that you're having. But if you make it and finish it and put it out there, there are people who like the things that you like. It's just, there are so many people out in the world. I just believe that no matter how niche you think your tastes are, your people are out there, and you'll find each other if you can find a way to reach them and to be visible. Finally, I may have said finally already, but I want to jump into Q&A soon. I want to say that these days, and maybe all along, in addition to the driver of wanting to be heard and wanting to say something, what really inspires me is people. And if I can leave you with anything, this part of our sitting down together, it's people. People inspire me, not just players, but my teammates and my peers. All along, I think that everything I've talked about, every opportunity and every job I've managed to pull off, has been because I've learned from the people around me. And even though I talk about wanting to be heard and wanting to speak my voice, I'm always learning from other people, and learning about myself by talking to them, learning skills from each other. So if you are making games, whether you're just getting into the industry or whether you've been doing it a long time, people are the most important thing, especially from a career point of view. Because at the end of the day, what your job looks like is probably working on a computer, probably in a room or online with other people. And that's your life. That's at least the working hours of your life. Let's say a third or half of your life is career. And so you'd better be good to each other. So I would leave you with that. I would say be kind and be empathetic. If you are making games, if you're a game designer or anyone participating in a game who has sort of a say in the game design, because all roles come together through game design, part of your job is empathy. Part of your job is to think about, what does the player want right now? What are they thinking right now? What are they feeling right now? That doesn't mean you have to be nice to them all the time. You could be making a horror game or a puzzle game that frustrates them, but you need to know what they're feeling. That's part of that craft. And I encourage you to apply that all over your career. So yes, be kind to your players. Treat them with respect. Stress them out or scare them if that's part of the experience, but don't cheat them. Respect their time. Don't make a 40-hour game because you like Final Fantasy and it's 40 hours. Make something that is good for as long as it's good and then end it. Whether that means that your game is 30 minutes long or 20 hours long, maybe. Respect the time. So be kind to your players. Be kind to your team, please. Support them. Offer help if you think that you can, or maybe if you don't know if you can, just offer to listen to someone. And ask for their help, ask for their input, because I will tell you, my favorite jobs and my favorite rooms that I ever get to step into as a game maker are the rooms where I feel like the dumbest person there. And it's stressful, but I know that if I'm the dumbest person in the room, or if I have the most to learn, that I'm learning the most. And I don't ever want to be in a room where I think that I'm the best at everything, nor do I think I could. So be kind to your team. And finally, be kind to yourself, because it is a long process to make a game. Games take different amounts of time, but from what I've seen for a commercial game, even if you get it out in like 4 to 6 months, which is very fast, that's 4 to 6 months, that's half a year. Or if you're like me, Hyperlight Drifter took 3 years. The Palm Tree project just hit its 2-year birthday. I was at Square Enix for 2 years. You start to do the math, and there's only so many projects that you get to make, and they fill up your life. So be kind to yourself, because once you're doing this job, if you want to keep doing it, you gotta give yourself space to still love it. Maybe you're not going to love it all the time. Shipping games is not fun. But give yourself time in between projects when you can, or give yourself space to keep loving it and to make sure that you're not too stressed out, so that you can help other people who you're working with to not be too stressed out. That's it. I'm sorry for ending a conversation about the games industry on the words stressed out. But if you take anything away from this, gosh, it's that hopefully if you're thinking about making games, you care about games, and there's something about games that make you feel good, and then you want to be a person to provide that to other people, and you want to feel how it feels to make those things real. So I hope you do that, and let's do some questions. Okay, hi, we moved. We're hanging out now. Welcome to my floor. Thanks for sending in some cool questions. I'm excited to answer some of these, and I will try to get to all of them. So, question number 1. Studios are as much about the people as the game, if not more. Did you handpick your teammates? And if so, what was that process like? Well, that depends on the project, but I will say on my current project, Palm Tree, I did. My producer and I handpicked everyone. And also at Square Enix, I handpicked most of the team and sought some of them out. The process is a lot of work, so much work. I think that my biggest mistakes in building teams early on and building my team early on at Square Enix is that I didn't devote enough time to it. Hiring is a full-time job. Even if you're at a company that has an HR department, in my opinion, it takes work, especially if you are trying to build a team that has some different voices and maybe some more marginalized groups in your community. I'm not as familiar with the dynamics in Singapore, but a lot of companies I've worked in, for example, a lot of white people, a lot of men, and I have looked to want to get more voices and more perspectives into the room. I think it makes the work better. And so, to answer your question, the process is a lot of searching because a lot of the people that I know don't fulfill that requirement, and it requires not just asking friends, which I do. I email, I message lists that I'm on, Discords that I'm in, but also just like looking through hashtags on Twitter, looking for portfolios. The people are out there and they're trying to be seen, and there's a lot of talent, and you have to do the work. You just have to dig around and find them. Question number 2. Considering Hyperlight's success with its Kickstarter campaign, what factors would you attribute to the project's speedy reaching of goals and subsequent campaign success, with many more stretch goals being added and then also reached? Yeah, much like with career, I think that giving advice from a successful Kickstarter is like running any sort of indie business, is a lot about luck and being prepared for luck. It is a combination of course, you're hoping to make something people will like, but also if people like it, you have to be able to leverage that. So I think to start, the project appealed to people. The page was built well. It was succinct. It had GIFs. The video was only about 2 minutes. It didn't waste a lot of time talking about what the project could be. It just showed some of the art and some of the ideas behind the project. During the campaign, which I was a part of, we did a lot of collaborations with other Kickstarters that had good momentum to try to keep it going. We did a live stream towards the end. We really tried to be engaged. I don't think that we did did something perfectly or had some special magic. I think we just we were making something that was connecting with people, and we made sure to talk to them. Alex put out a backer message once a day, which for some people is too noisy, but you can always delete emails. So every day for 30 days, put out a thing, said, here's how it's going, here's what we're doing right now, here's the next goal. Really wanted to involve people because it's a gift to have people who want to be involved in the first place, and they are your best allies in trying to spread the word. We also did have existing established relationships. I knew a lot of the game's press because I'd been to events, because I'd been reaching out to them for years on older projects, and I tried to reach out to the right journalists and try to get their attention. Question number 3. With regards to Kickstarter campaigns in general or specifically Hyperlight, at what point in the project did you decide to pursue a Kickstarter? So Alex decided to pursue the Kickstarter for Hyperlight. I mentioned in my talk, he concepted with Bo for about 6 months. They had a prototype. It was very rough. Most of what I think they had determined that they wanted it to be top down, and a couple mechanics, some of which we threw out later, some of which stayed. And of course the art style, which itself developed a lot. If you look at the Kickstarter video carefully, you'll see that the style of the game changed a lot over the course of development. So that was always the plan, was to run a Kickstarter, I believe, but it took about 6 months of tinkering part-time for Alex to want to decide to move forward with the Kickstarter, if that answers your question. What's next? Number 4. There are 11 of these, by the way. Number 4, how do you come up with a viable game idea or even a story idea? That's a good question. I have a terrible memory, so I write things down a lot. I write down jokes that come into my mind. I write down ideas for games. And usually the ones that I end up working on are the ones that stick, the ones that I can't stop thinking about, or that when I come back to, I still like them. But how do you come up with an idea? I was saying earlier that you're not as original as you think. I'm not as original as I think. I'm looking for something from a project concept that speaks to me, that excites me, that I would want to play and that I would want to work on for a long time. I'm also looking for an idea that I feel like hasn't been done, at least in the exact way that I hope to do it. And I'm looking for an idea that contributes something that is needed. So I've used this as an example. I worked on a project for a little while called Kyoto Wild, named after the city of Kyoto that I've lived in a little bit in Japan. It was a multiplayer fighting game. It was really exciting to me to work on. I had a lot of fun working on it. There were a lot of mechanics that I was really interested in. I was inspired by old multiplayer games like Power Stone and Bushido Blade and things like that. But ultimately, it didn't cut it. It didn't. I didn't keep going with it, and I did not consider it a viable idea because I didn't think it was contributing something that was needed. There were a lot of games I was having fun playing multiplayer at the time. I also didn't think the games industry needed another game set in Japan made by an American. That felt not necessary to me, and I started working on something more personal because I knew I only get so many of these projects, and I have to really want it to exist. I think you have to really need it to exist. It helps. You can make something that you think is fun, especially if it's going to be a smaller project, or you want to put out something quickly. You don't want it, you don't want every project to be like your life's masterpiece and put that much pressure on it. But you gotta really love something about it and trust that other people will love it too. And that it's something honest that you think not just that people would want to play and that the world could benefit from, or some people could benefit from, but that should be made by you, that you have a right to speak about the story, or some perspective that's honest, that you can speak about it accurately. Question number 5, do you outline a script or go with the flow? I am a planner. So I can't say much, but I will say I did a lot of writing at Square Enix, and I have done a lot of writing for Project Palm Tree, hundreds of pages. I am an outliner, so I go from a tradition of screenwriting, and specifically from character-focused screenwriting. So usually where I start from is a general story idea, maybe an idea of where the story is going to go, and then I start to build my cast. Who are the main characters? How do they balance each other? What are their relationships with each other? Where do each of these characters come from? Usually characters come from a combination of people I've met or people I've known. I don't write people I know into stories because I don't think that's respectful to steal someone's life story, but I'll take a few people and try to build an archetype of a person. And that gets me starting on a character and thinking, oh, it's this type of person, this friend of mine and that person I knew in high school and this person. And then over time, I will delete those inspirations off of my character sheet. I keep a character sheet of every character that I'm developing. So where are they from? What's their job? What are they good at? What are they bad at? What do they like? What do they not like? Where are they at the beginning of my story? Where do I want them to go? What do I want their journey to be? And most importantly, what decision do they make at the end of their story that they couldn't have made at the beginning of the story? How did they grow or change? Then I start to put the pieces together. I have a couple characters. I need them to work with each other's story. And that's how I start to figure out what the plot will be. Then I outline. And outlining is about knowing where I need to go, breaking it into smaller pieces, and knowing what each scene or beat of the story accomplishes, because every beat needs to accomplish something. I could talk about writing for a long time, but I got to keep going. So I'm an outliner. I go from character sheet to what we call a treatment, which is an outline and then a treatment. A treatment is like I do a treatment before an outline. Treatment is like has beats of stories. You might actually write out some of the scenes to give yourself an idea of it before you go to like really outlining the whole thing. Anyway, number 6. What was your experience like working with Kowloon Nights? I'm still working with Kowloon Nights. I love them. I met them a couple years ago after I left Square Enix, and they were interested in talking to me about a project. They encouraged me to make the version of the project that was most important to me, and they have been nothing but supportive. I was very sensitive after Square Enix and my experiences there that I wanted creative control, and I wanted my team to be in charge of their work, not Kowloon. And Kowloon was very comfortable with that. They are not a publisher. They are just we are business partners, and they help us a lot with strategy and the business, but they don't dictate the creative process, but they're there to support. Really, really, in my experience so far, very lucky to have that sort of partner that is funding games and handles the money side, but are in it for the right reasons, and they really get excited about the projects and want to support them, and try to put the creators forward. And they're not trying to be the voice. Sometimes an indie publisher can overtake its creators, and people will say, "Oh, did you play that game by this publisher?" And you have to think, wait, the publisher didn't make the game. Didn't these developers make the game? Does anyone know that? Another long answer. Number 7. So Kowloon's great. Number 7. What do you think about complaints about secrets being too secretive in Hyperlight Drifter? I haven't. I've heard some of that, but not a lot. It depends on what people, why they're upset or what a complaint is. When you make something with mystery, a part of your audience is always going to be a little frustrated, a little upset that they didn't get all the answers. But I think that the way that you present a world and a story and mysteries is important. I think there are mysteries that the work promises to answer, and there are mysteries that it doesn't promise to answer. So at the beginning of Hyperlight, we present this diamond object that the drifter is going towards in this sort of dream. Without words, of course, we do follow up on that in the story. That to me is a promise. We're saying, hey, there's this mystery that we're throwing in your face. So that we have a responsibility as storytellers to pay off and to answer your questions about that. But when it comes to the mysteries of some of the writings in the world that you'll find, some of the set pieces and the art and the history of the world, it is a part of the story. It is a part of the character's history and the world's history, but we don't promise to give you all the answers. And I like that. And I like when people interpret it how they want to. We have some things we know specifically that are true that people don't know, but I think enough of it comes forward that they get the point. People can get the point of the story, and those little details, it's better to leave some space, especially if you're building a world. I hate to summon Star Wars as an example, but what makes the original Star Wars so great, and some of the later ones not as great, is that it opens up a lot of questions. They mention things that they never answer. What is the Kessel Run? What is this planet they mentioned? What are these things? It's very open about tossing things at you that it's not really going to tell you everything about. God, sorry for quoting Star Wars. But I love it. Question 8. Okay, here we go. How do you market and monetize games when the concept is novel and unprecedented in a way that doesn't follow popular market trends? Any suggestions, feedback based on your own experiences pitching games to investors? Lots of ideas. I think that if you have something novel and unprecedented, that's the best thing to try to market. That's what everybody wants. Like, if it's really novel, if it's really something that no one has seen before and that is going to mean something to someone, that's the best sort of thing to be able to hit up journalists and say, hey, I'm making this thing. Like, maybe it's like this other thing that you love. You find out what a journalist loves, and you email that journalist who loves something that was an inspiration to you. But having something novel is the best. And there's always going to be inspirations you can pull from in terms of who's our market and who might like this game. Look at your inspirations and see what your kind of nearest competitors are, even if they're kind of distant. In terms of pitching, I don't have time to get super into this, but one of my biggest suggestions for pitching to investors is have good sound if you can. That's really important. And before the current pandemic, whenever I was pitching in person, I started bringing my own quality speakers with me. I would bring them in a suitcase because good sound, if you have sound design and music in your game already, it really sells the emotional experience of something. It's very important. Or even headphones. I have sat someone down at GDC, sat down Microsoft in a loud cafe and put headphones on them and said, you have to wear these headphones. I really want you to hear this. Sound is really important. I got to keep going. Question 9, are there any game genres or concepts that you think are underserved and have potential to become leading market trends? I don't tend to come from a place of like, what does the market want? Operating an indie gives you the luxury, I think, of not having to play the big numbers game. You do want to make something original, but you don't have to like go with a trend or figure out the trend. So I can't speak to that, but I will say that I'm eager to see more and more indie games that are about weird online experiments and how people interact online, especially with the pandemic. I am sure that we'll see a lot of those things coming out in the next couple of years because I know I'm especially interested in different ways of playing with my friends. Cool. Question 10, we're almost there. And we're going to be on time. Can you share with us your upcoming projects? So excited. Thank you for being excited. No, I can't, but I will tell you, I'll put some information somehow in the video. The project I'm working on now, we call it the Palm Tree Project. That is a code name. It's funded by Kowloon. We have a team of 27 plus, almost 30 plus people now who have touched it and worked on it. You can look at some of their work and maybe start to guess about what could be involved in our project. Everyone who works on it has an important imprint on the project and what it is. So I think if you look at everyone, and you can start to maybe get some, maybe not clues, but get some ideas. But we are not announced yet, but you can follow us. I'll put the information down there. We are the Palm Tree team. And last question, did you get into TikTok or Final Fantasy XIV? Referencing my tweet. I've been in quarantine, so I'm like looking for new stuff on the internet. I'm not into TikTok yet. I think TikTok is really interesting though. And I have a friend who just started promoting his game Wobble Dogs on TikTok and suddenly has 50,000 followers. I'm excited for game dev TikTok to become a thing. I think I haven't seen a lot of it, but it's got to be out there, and I want to see more and more of it because I think TikTok is a cool, weird platform for, I don't know, talking about game dev and showing your process. Final Fantasy XIV is very different, and I haven't played it, but I might. I have not been playing it because I have been having a hand injury, so I will leave you with this piece of advice. Take care of your hands, take care of your back, stretch. Your hands are so important, and artists, I think visual artists are taught to take care of their hands, to stretch their hands, to rest their hands, and a lot of programmers, game designers are not taught that in school. And you will absolutely deal with hand pain in your career, I promise you. So start thinking about it now, thinking about ergonomics and stuff. Protect your tools. Protect your tools. That's all I got. Thanks so much for having me and listening. I hope you got something out of this. And I'm excited to see what y'all make. Say hi to me on Twitter. That's where I usually hang out. And have a good conference. Have a good day. Bye.